All right, so there is some pretty concerning stuff going on over in China. Now, China had, with Deng Xiaoping coming in the late 70s to replace Mao, who was a complete lunatic, what he ended up doing was he essentially put China on a path towards going into more of a capitalist direction. Now, it wouldn't go full on capitalism, kind of more like a state capitalist type of system. They wouldn't really do any sort of reallocation of profits from businesses and that, but they would be heavily state influenced as well. But they opened up for trade, normalized relations with the United States, got together with Jimmy Carter, and ever since then, their economy fucking blew up. It was going up like, I don't know, like 10% GDP increase. I don't know if it was like every year or something, but it just, ever since Deng Xiaoping just started exploding like crazy. So they had set up a system that was supposed to have it where the leaders would, switch out every once in a while. But Xi Jinping has basically taken all of that stuff out. And now what you see is he has a chokehold just like Mao did. He basically, honestly, I want to say he basically has the same power over China. If not the same, I mean, it's obviously somewhat close. But he is the leader of China now. There's no one left to challenge him. He got rid of all of his potential opponents through a fake corruption campaign, which he conveniently took out a bunch of his political rivals. So it's now Xi Jinping. That's who it is, okay? And the thing is, the Chinese economy had been going on so well that he was able to wave off of that, essentially. A lot of it came before him as well. It was increasing crazily after Deng Xiaoping. And so because of that huge increase that lifted like hundreds of millions out of poverty, he's been able to capitalize on that. So he now has a chokehold, and now what he's doing is, it says, Xi Jinping Thought, school lessons alarm Chinese parents. Country is in danger of embracing a cult of personality, warns academic. And so, honestly, this is something that's going on in both China and Russia. Russia is also very, very heavily now just a cult of personality country. I was even watching a video where, like, some dude goes around and interviews people, and, they were saying they weren't communists anymore, and the Red Empire was dead, and then people were saying that I'm a Putinist. So this is typically what these autocracies have, where it becomes a personality cult around this one guy who ends up gaining power over the entire nation. And that is what has happened in both Russia and China at this point. So it says, a campaign to make children as young as 10 study President Xi Jinping's political philosophy has been labeled by some parents as disgusting and evoked memories of Mao Zedong's personality cult. More than a dozen parents across the country told the Financial Times they were uncomfortable with the rollout next month of classes on Xi Jinping Thought. The eponymous philosophy, which features a mixture of patriotic education and praise for the Chinese Communist Party's General Secretary, will become part of the national curriculum from primary school to university next month. Something also interesting to note about China is they've kept up the facade of the Communist Party of China, when in reality it's essentially nowhere even close to communism or socialism for that matter in their country. It's more like a state capitalist system. So what they've done is they've retained that faux, ostensibly Communist Party image, but really that's not what it is. So it's very bizarre to kind of see that. They've stuck with that as the culture thing, but ideologically, they did not do that at all. They actually went away from it quite hard. I really hate the idea of forcing children to study ideology, said a mother of a 10-year-old in eastern Jiangsu province who did not want to be identified, but I can't voice my concern in front of my son. This is disgusting, said a father of a school-aged daughter in central Henan province, who also did not want to be identified by name. He hoped his daughter would forget about everything after she is done with the exam. So basically, parents are saying that this is very concerning, of course. It also says, over the past 30 years, communist doctrine did not feature in Chinese school course until middle school, with textbooks featuring a wider cast of China's past leaders. China is embracing a cult of personality when diversity and inclusion are gaining ground in other parts of the world, said Ming Shai, a political science professor at the City University of New York. Starting from the third grade, students will take one class a week about Xi's ideas, with the same textbooks used in every province. The course will last a semester and will also apply to high school, college, and graduate school students. That's fucking insane, dude. So it's just full on. This is, wow. I mean, this is crazy to even see in a major nation like that in 2021. Third graders will be taking a class a week on Xi Jinping's ideas, where the books are going to have like pictures of him with lies about him being a soldier and all this stuff. It's a bunch of bogus stuff. Xi is a big clown too. He obviously, there's no freedom of speech whatsoever. There's virtually no freedoms at all in China. The Chinese people, I think, they don't have really a history of democracy in their country at all. They were also essentially they were a semi-colonial state in previous to World War II, because they had been a huge empire that was like a historical empire, but they got way too comfortable and they ended up being outmaneuvered by Western powers, and so they became a semi-colonial state in that there were ports of interest from other nations that existed, and they were essentially subjugated by other countries. British Opium Wars. Hey, we don't want to buy your opium anymore. Britain went to war with them, said, bitch, you're going to buy our opium. So, they had to kind of go on the defensive. But they don't have essentially any freedoms, and neither does Russia. It's very scary, and it kind of shows you the big difference between the United States and a country like China or Russia, and just how good you kind of have it in the U.S., where you actually have freedoms. In China right now, they have like 1 million Uyghurs, Muslims, in these education camps. They're just concentration camps where they just give them books and teach them to idolize Xi. So this is crazy. I mean, this is definitely really, really bonkers. And the thing is, there's no pressure put on China by really anybody in the world, period, because through the Belt and Road Initiative, they own like half the world in terms of infrastructure, so they have a lot of power internationally. That was also part of the new plan that was put in place. But countries are very dependent upon China for trade, so they're heavily export economy, so you can get cheap goods from China. So it's very, very important for Western nations. So there's no one to really actually put pressure on China, and that's the scary part. So they have like a concentration camp with like 1 million, Muslims in there being indoctrinated with Xi Jinping thought. And it's definitely crazy to see this. Definitely goes to show a lot of insecurity and a lot of fear, like almost like Stalinist level paranoia. When Stalin would just kill everybody around him because you're conspiring against me. He's just paranoid as fuck. So that's what Xi seems to be. Now, I think that the only way that the Chinese people would rise up against Xi would really or anybody. I mean, the thing is, Xi doesn't really have any political opponents at this point because he took all of them out. So, and the Chinese people are heavily indoctrinated to an extreme degree. They don't have a history of democracy in their country. And, the economy simply improved too much from starting in 1980, essentially. So, ever since 1980, the economy fucking exploded. And so people are happy. They're like, well, look, hundreds of millions were pulled out of poverty. So they're chilling. They're like, damn, okay. This is cool. We're not like a peasant country anymore. We're not just like subsistence farming anymore. We actually can buy things and we're very powerful, etc. So the only way I see this turning over is if there would be like some kind of economic downturn. At that point, Xi is in big trouble because that's when the real backlash will come. But as long as the economy is able to stay afloat, and not only is it able to stay afloat, but the way that they ban literally anything social media wise, everything is banned. YouTube, Wikipedia, all this stuff is banned. Anything critical is banned. They have like social credit scores now. It's insane. It's fucking crazy. But definitely not sure what's gonna happen. Same thing for Russia. Don't know what's gonna happen to Putin. Don't know how long he's gonna last over there. But pretty scary stuff. They are indoctrinating kids now with whatever Xi Jinping thought is, creating massive, massive cult of personality. Imagine if starting in 3rd grade you had to learn Trump thought every week. It'd be completely bonkers.